Why am I here? What am I doing? I wondered the same thing as I drew a blank every time I tried to think about what I would say here today. What do I have to say to you? How can I inspire people who are already doing work that is just as inspiring, if not more than mine? Self-reflection can be really difficult. In a desperate attempt, I looked up the word inspire in the dictionary. You know it's bad when you're going to the dictionary for some help. Well, anyway, some of the definitions were overwhelming and kind of scary, but the one that I liked the most was to fill or affect with a feeling, thought, etc. So my goal is to do just that. I hope that in listening to my work, my client stories, my experience, you will be motivated to think about the work that you do, perhaps in a new way. My name is Khalili-Borna. I have my master's in public policy and my JD from the University of Michigan. Go blue. Can I get a go blue? Okay. Feels so good. I'm currently an AmeriCorps Recovery Fellow, but last year I was an AmeriCorps Legal Fellow. I work in the Homelessness Prevention Law Project at Public Counsel in Los Angeles, and my main area of work is public benefits advocacy. Two things drew me to my current position. The first was that I knew I wanted to work in an area of the law, where it intersects policy. I wanted to be able to perform both direct client services and to work on the policy level, because I think the direct client work really helps to inform the policy. Oops, messed up. Oh, I don't help. Sorry. The second reason was that I really wanted to work on a project where I felt like I could have a significant impact. Working on a homelessness prevention project in Los Angeles seemed to be a perfect fit. LA County has a population of 10 million and a homeless population larger than that of New York, San Francisco, and Chicago combined. As of the 2007 homeless count, LA County had a homeless population approximating 74,000 people on any given night and 142,000 throughout the course of a year. LA has also been ranked the meanest city to homeless. This position seemed like a great opportunity for me to provide free legal services to the poor and indigent and to really make an impact. The 2009 homeless count is not yet complete. However, we are anticipating a huge increase in the number of homeless, largely due to the economy. To give you an idea of how the economic crisis has impacted our client base, based on numbers from past summer programs, I was anticipating having approximately 500 clients over the summer. I serviced over 2,000 clients. Makes more sense now. This economic recession has brought with it not only a seeming increase in the number of homeless people in Los Angeles, but it's also brought about a shift in the demographics. I've worked with a far greater number of people who are highly educated, who have MBAs and master's degrees, who graduated from Harvard, who never grew up in the cycle of poverty, who until the recent past have owned homes, luxury vehicles, and maintained savings accounts. I've seen people who've lost all of their financial security. I meet them in the LA County Department of Public Social Services welfare offices, applying for food stamps, Medi-Cal, and General Relief, or CalWORKs, which is LA County and California's cash assistance. They're embarrassed by their situations. They're made to feel worse by county workers who fail to meet their needs, who lack compassion, who are burnt out, who themselves may be struggling financially, and who often lack understanding about the programs they work under and the regulations that dictate those programs. Sometimes these individuals are made to feel so ashamed that they leave the county offices without any assistance. As one client put it, "It took a lot for me to even come here in the first place. I never imagined that I would be in this position. I came here looking for some sort of assistance, and I was treated with such ignorance that I would rather leave the office now with nothing but maintain my dignity." Maintaining dignity can be a challenge for many of my homeless clients. If I can help connect someone with crucial services in the first 30 days of becoming homeless, the chances are pretty good that the person will be able to get back on his or her feet, find employment, get into housing. But after that time period, it becomes significantly more difficult. The longer someone is homeless, the harder it becomes to find stable employment and shelter. The more likely it is that the person has tickets and warrants outstanding for quality of life infractions, such as loitering or open container violations, the more likely it is that the person has untreated chronic physical and mental health problems. Many of my clients are chronically homeless, which by definition is an unaccompanied individual with a disabling condition who has been continually homeless for 1 year or more, or has experienced 4 or more episodes of homelessness within the past 3 years. Many of them are suffering from physical and or mental disability. A good number of them struggle with substance abuse. Most of them are individuals with no safety net, no family or friends, no savings or other resources. Many of them lack basic skills, including literacy and communication skills. Many of them have lost their sense of self-worth and are struggling to hold on to the last shred of dignity they have. The client, Greg, who made the statement about holding on to his dignity, had moved to California from the East Coast with his fiancée, Diane. They had over $300,000 in savings, and Greg has his MBA. Greg and Diane came out to California to start a business, and they put all of their money into it. The economy tanked, and so did their business. They lost all of their money. Up until recently, they'd been staying with a friend on his couch, but he had just been evicted, as he had just lost his job and had not been able to find another. When I met Greg, he and Diane were about to leave the welfare office with nothing. They had been made to wait almost an entire day, and then, when each of them was finally seen by an intake worker, they were made to feel like they were undeserving liars. Each of them had had a similar experience. The workers took one look at them: clean, attractive, young, educated, and did not believe that they were homeless. The workers gave them an appointment to return in 2 weeks to be serviced then. This bias is not uncommon in the present economic situation. When Diane told me this, I immediately got involved and spoke with our advocate liaison in the office, who's several tiers above the workers in the bureaucratic hierarchy. His first response to me was, "Well, they don't look homeless." I thought to myself, well, upon first glance, you don't look completely ignorant, but I refrained from saying anything too distasteful. I told him that his comment was inappropriate and inconsistent with the county's own regulations, which state that if someone self-identifies as homeless, they must be screened and serviced immediately. By the end of the day, I was able to get both Greg and Diane food stamps and hotel vouchers for 2 weeks. Both of them were also able to submit applications for cash assistance. Greg had several job interviews lined up that week, but clearly hadn't slept or eaten in days and was afraid that his appearance would prevent him from getting a job. Within 2 months, both Greg and Diane were working full-time and had gotten themselves into housing. Within 3 months, both of them were off of public assistance. To date, this is one of my greatest success stories. Most of the stories don't end quite as well. In fact, part of what made it hard for me to come up with some really inspiring stories about my successes to relate to you is that my successes feel small. I do outreach in the County Department of Public Social Services offices, and that's where I meet the majority of my clients. Some days I think of myself less like a lawyer and more like a perpetual cutter of red tape. Although my predecessors and I have worked towards shifting the culture of no within this governmental agency, it is a seemingly snail-paced process. Most of my clients see me once and have no follow-up. I don't get to know many of the clients very well, and often the issues they have either inside the office with obtaining public assistance or outside of the office where they're treated like criminals or regarded as rubbish because of their poverty and homelessness start to sound the same. Joe, another client, is more representative of the typical success. Joe is chronically homeless. Over the years, he has been in and out of prison, on and off the streets, can't find a job and lacks basic skills. Joe is not illiterate, but has low literacy skills. He has no support network, and with his record and low skill level, has extreme difficulty finding and holding on to a job. I met him at the DPSS office because after his last stint in jail, he was homeless again and in need of public assistance. The office was busy, and although he was supposed to be processed that same day, he was given an appointment to come back in 2 weeks to complete the application for assistance. My volunteer advocates and I got involved to help Joe get the attention that he needed. We were able to get him a hotel voucher for 2 weeks, referrals for shelters after that, food stamps for the night, and a worker to take his application for general relief. But once his hotel voucher was used up, Joe likely ended up back on the streets with food stamps and possibly general relief, but homeless. The maximum amount for general relief, in the amount of $221 per month, is probably not nearly enough money for Joe to find decent, safe, stable accommodations. I've not heard back from Joe. Most of the homeless clients don't have phones or a consistent number where they can be reached, making communication difficult. Joe's story is not uncommon. When I was asked to talk to you today to inspire you with my success, I really struggled with finding the client stories to reveal. My colleagues and mentors said, "You've been so successful," but I really couldn't understand how. I reflected a lot on my work and on my clients, and I really forced myself to think about why it was that when I was able to assist 3,460 clients by utilizing the support of 811 volunteers, I felt like I hadn't really been that successful. Whoopsies. There we go. Technology is not my forte. The reason was suddenly clear to me. My own expectations of what I could do and what would be a successful case when I started my fellowship were perhaps too hopeful and unrealistic. I came into my job really wanting to impact homelessness by eradicating it. Anything short of that, including client stories like Joe's, did not feel like a success. So even though I could recognize that I was helping clients, the successes often felt small because at the end of the day, most of the clients are still homeless. However, what my evaluation of my work has led me to conclude is that although I may not directly impact this amorphous concept of homelessness, I do impact the lives of human beings who are homeless. I assist people to obtain their most basic needs: food, transportation, medical care, financial assistance, and shelter, whether temporary or more permanent. For the people I assist who might otherwise not get the services they need, my work is a success. For all of us, how we define success for our projects will differ, but it is so important to think about what success means for you. So far, I have discussed the importance of self-evaluation in redefining and personalizing success. The final thing I'd like to discuss is the importance of drawing boundaries. I think I'm quite well equipped to discuss this because of how much I've struggled with this in the past year. One of my favorite poems by Edna St. Vincent Millay is short and simple. It reads, "My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night, but all my foes and oh my friends, it gives a lovely light." Too many of those of us who start out in public interest will leave burnt out. Just as so many before us have had these vibrant lights during the course of their work, we start to follow in their footsteps to be this bright light. But at some point, we allow the work to take over. We start working so hard for our clients and for their compelling stories that we forget our own in the process. We may stop doing things for ourselves, things that we like. I love yoga and have practiced for many years, perhaps largely in part because there's something to looking at the world upside down that helps me put things into perspective. Anyway, last year I allowed myself to get so wrapped up with work that I stopped making it a priority to go to yoga class. I would blame it on the classes not being at a convenient time or the price being too much and a luxury I couldn't afford on my salary. I started working later and later, and then even tried to fool myself into thinking that I wasn't working that much by bringing the work home. I kept thinking things would ease up at some point in the relatively near future, but I kept pushing that time back further and further. It didn't seem to help that people at work referred to me as a bright star. I think some would say that a star, too, gives a lovely light. Maybe you don't struggle with this same issue. For me, the struggle isn't that I love to work and have to work every waking moment in order to feel complete. The problem was that I was empathizing with my clients so much that their lives always took priority over mine. On the nights when I would sit in my comfortable apartment, heated, air-conditioned or otherwise, on my comfortable couch, in my comfortable clothes, eating food. I would think about my clients and the many more individuals, 4 out of 10 in fact, who were homeless and at risk of homelessness out there in LA County. I would feel guilty that I complained about my own financial situation when my clients and these others were still worse off. A few months ago, I attended a mandatory training on sympathy fatigue. Although I was not looking forward to the training initially, it really forced me to reflect on my job and on myself. Sympathy fatigue is apparently really common in public interest work. Essentially, what happens is that when we as human beings work with other human beings who are suffering, it's our natural instinct to empathize with them. This is a normal and healthy reaction. The problem arises when we start to adopt the emotions and struggles of our clients as our own. At the training, we were given a list of symptoms indicative of sympathy fatigue and asked to self-evaluate. I had almost all of the symptoms. Perhaps an even greater struggle for those of us in public interest work is the fact that often the attorneys we are going up against or the agencies and systems we are working under are so rigid and unfeeling that we overcompensate. Often it may seem that the same systems that are supposed to help our clients tear them down or simply ignore them and their struggle to obtain and hold on to the most basic of needs. By the end of my first AmeriCorps year, I was pretty exhausted. It's not surprising, though, when you consider that I gave up the things that I enjoy, the things that in a lot of ways make me and keep me human. Once my second year started and my 13 summer clerks had left, I decided to start doing things differently. One of the most major changes is that I started drawing lines. I moved further away from work. I think it didn't help that initially I lived within 4 blocks of work. I also started back into yoga. The other morning at yoga, the instructor said something that now seems so relevant to this idea of setting your own reasonable limits. She said, you have to find your own boundaries and work within them, and it is through working through the limits that you may find freedom. The interesting thing is that I've found that with the changes I've made and the lines that I've drawn between my work life and my personal life is that I'm much happier in both areas. Moreover, drawing reasonable boundaries has allowed me to reinvigorate my passion for the work that I do serving the public. I have found that just as it is so important for our clients to be treated like human beings, it is so important for us to treat ourselves like human beings. You have to take care of your own needs first before you can help others. It's like the oxygen mask in the airplane. You're supposed to secure your own air, your own life source before you can help others. So back to my first 2 questions. Why are you here, and what are you doing? This is a leadership development conference. You may be thinking that you don't really need to focus on being a leader. You just want to do your job. I had those same thoughts last year as I sat here. You may not be thinking about it now, or you may not yet realize it, but at some point you have to face it. You are a leader. That's why you're here. Those of you who are traditional AmeriCorps fellows are leaders for the students you train and with whom you work. All of us are leaders for our clients who naturally look to us for guidance to help solve their problems. The second reason you're here is to think. Think about your work and the work of your peers across the country. Think about what it means to be a leader. You are here not to learn the textbook definition of leadership, but to learn how you define leadership. Although this conference provides the opportunity to listen to distinguished people, not necessarily me, and to network with your amazing peers, what you will take from this conference is a very individualized experience that comes out of being mindful of yourselves and your projects. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not asking you to accept my story as your own. But now that you've heard my story and the stories of a few of my clients, I encourage you to think about what your story and the stories of your clients say. What does success mean for you? And perhaps most importantly, what are your limits and boundaries, and how can you work meaningfully within them to achieve your professional and personal goals and to service your clients? Thank you, and I look forward to meeting everyone.